Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Rugby India 360 Degrees. आज हम बात करने वाले हैं महेश मथाई के साथ, जो इंडियन रग्बी फुटबॉल यूनियन के प्रेसिडेंट हैं. मेरा महेश के साथ रिश्ता बहुत मतलब कितने साल बाद में पहले I'll tell you. हम पहले शायद मिले थे रग्बी फील्ड पे 1984 में, 16 और 20 36 साल पहले. अक्सर हम देखते हैं कि गेम्स फेडरेशंस, नेशनल फेडरेशंस पे जो प्लान्स बन रहे हैं, क्या हो रहा है, क्या नक्शा है, उसमें प्लेयर्स और बाकी जो उसी खेल के जो फ्रेटर्निटी के लोग हैं, उनको ज़्यादा नहीं पता चलता है कि क्या हो रहा है नेशनल लेवल पे, क्या प्लान्स है, भविष्य में क्या होने वाला है. सो दैट्स नॉट द वे इट इज़ विथ इंडियन रग्बी. वी आर डिटर्मिन्ड टू be transparent and share with the entire fraternity what what the plans are of the National Federation, what people are trying to do, what the future plans are, so that there is a kind of the knowledge of what's going on with your sport. I think it's really important for a player to know. So आज का जो डिस्कशन होगा, वो डिस्कशन हो रहा है 6 मुद्दों पे. I'll say it in English also. We're discussing 6 aspects today. I'm going to be talking to Mahesh a little bit about who Mahesh Makhai is. शायद ज़्यादा लोगों को पता नहीं कि he used to be a rugby player, फिर rugby administration में काफ़ी involved हुआ करते थे, and of course today he's the president. महेश के साथ मैं आज हम बातचीत करने वाले हैं एक क्लब रग्बी के बारे में, 2 नेशनल मेंस टीम के बारे में, 3 नेशनल वुमेन्स टीम के बारे में, 4 अलग अलग रीजन्स में, अलग अलग डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स में क्या हो रहा है फॉर द ग्रोथ ऑफ इंडियन रग्बी. 5 वी आर गोइंग टू बी टॉकिंग अबाउट एक प्लान हो रहा है कि बन रहा है कि नहीं कि रग्बी सेंटर इस देश में कब होगा, क्योंकि ये स्पोर्ट की परवरिश के लिए बहुत ज़रूरी बात है. वी नीड टू हैव अ सेंटर ऑफ रग्बी टू रियली हैव टू बी द काइंड ऑफ मदरशिप, टू बी द काइंड ऑफ place that everybody aspires to go to hone their skills. And finally, of course, we'll be talking about future plans. Okay, so let's see. Where is Mahesh? 6 तो अभी बजने वाले हैं. Just hold on a second. Let me just get him on. The interview will be conducted in English. Mahesh's Hindi is not very good, so I hope you guys will understand. If you don't, then please send me a comment here to say, could you please translate that, and I'll go ahead and do that. I've just accepted Mahesh onto the page. Mahesh?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. I heard you say my Hindi is not too good. Thank you for saving me. I was going to speak a little bit of Hindi, especially for our friends from the north, Delhi wale.
आप हिंदी में बात करोगे कि नहीं?
कोशिश तो करूंगा. ज़्यादातर comfortable हूँ इंग्लिश में.
I'll translate whenever somebody needs things to be translated. Welcome. पहले तो हम बात करना चाहते हैं आपसे कि very few people are very aware of what your connection to Indian rugby is or has been. So I did say before you came on that I have known you since 1984. when we played rugby together on the field.
Yeah.
But why don't you tell us a little bit about your beginnings with rugby, and then how you came to the administration side?
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really a trip down memory lane, because I actually started playing rugby in 1978 for a club called Wilson Gymkhana, which is no more, but is a famous old club, and we used to play on the fields on Marine Drive on the Wilson College ground, and we were the biggest rivals to my current club side, the Bombay Gymkhana, which is another story for another show. But that's when we started. We were all in our teens. I didn't play it in school, unlike a lot of people, including Rahul here. I didn't have the opportunity to play it in school. So we started playing in college. And there was a handful of clubs in Mumbai and a handful of clubs in Kolkata. That's it. We used to have a national tournament every year, which still goes on, the wonderful All India and South Asia. And that's where my rugby life started. And believe me, there used to be these T-shirts for all types of sports saying this. But the one thing for rugby was rugby is life. The rest are mere details. That happened right there. Honestly, that became a way of life, a way of being, friendships that continue to last almost, 30, 40 years, and they will last for a lifetime. So it was a pathway that ran alongside whatever else you did. Whatever career, I was still in college then. You finished college, you got your first job, you did whatever work you did, but rugby remained a constant alongside in terms of not just interest in the game, but the values that came along with it.
So you began to play in the late 70s, 78, did you say, 79?
Yeah, 78 is when I started. The famous Wilson Gymkhana had just won the All India. I didn't play for that side in 77 in Kolkata. So all these young college boys were heroes, starting around. And I joined that side as a junior. But that was when I started. Yeah.
So I met you when you played for the Bombay Gym in 84.
Yeah.
And
yes.
You played then. When did you retire, Mahesh, from the sport?
When did I retire? Meaning, when did I get off the field? I haven't retired.
As a player?
Actually, it's crazy. Even when one got into one's 40s, we were still playing, and that says two things. One is, of course, one's very interested in, and therefore you'll keep going into the 40s playing full contact rugby, which is not advisable. The other thing that happened was rugby turned, alongside with the sport all over the world. The game changed. It turned professional. The standards changed. The size of players, the amount of work that went into being a player changed from what we played, which was much more club rugby. You played with a bunch of friends and you went off and had a drink after that, and it was physically tough, but it was not to the standards that it was. So into my early 40s, I realized that, look, now you're going to get injured a little more seriously. So it's not a 2-day recovery. It can be a 2-week recovery. So, one had to stop playing active rugby. One still did play a bit of touch, but there's nothing that comes close to playing the real game. And once in a way, we'll get some international side, which is parliamentarians or somebody, which is, people over 45 or 50. And we attempt to get back on the field and play full contact, but that's really very rare.
Okay, so people are complaining that they can't hear me loudly enough. Just send me comments, guys. Can you hear me now? Is it better? I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you.
So I'm going to continue.
Yeah.
So let's get down to now administration. You became a president of the IRFU last year, 2019.
Yeah, just did it last September.
Right. Okay. So let's start this the more serious part of the talk by you telling us what is the naksha, what is the state or the stats or what's going on with Indian rugby today, so people really have an idea as to the breadth and the spread of the sport.
Okay, I'll just jump back a little bit, Rahul, because I'll jump back to those years when not just when I was playing for Wilson and the Bombay Gymkhana, but when there was only club rugby. There were 5 or 6 clubs in Mumbai, 5 or 6 clubs in Kolkata, and a few others from South India and the great Delhi players started joining into that club tournament, which was the All India, and we played 1 year in Kolkata, 1 year over here. That was rugby in India. That was it. And it didn't have a future in that. We didn't think it was going to spread or get larger or any of that, except from the few players that were inducted just through friendships. You'd bring in players, and that was the only way we added to the rugby pool. And then something interesting happened that World Rugby got interested in spreading rugby all over the world, and they came in and assisted Rugby India, IRFU, to start spreading the teaching of the game, which is the grassroots and all of that. Now, that change made not only a change in numbers, but in who was playing the game. And that, I think, is the most exciting thing that happened to Indian rugby. That suddenly it moved out of clubs which were sort of elite and private and, and not open to all, to very public situations of schools, boys and girls all over the country started getting an opportunity to be coached and trained and to enter this game. And that was the big difference. And managing the game from what it was, of a 12 club game in India to more than 100,000 people playing requires a completely different kind of management. And that's, so as you can imagine, I won't go through every stage, but we had to step up and keep changing our management to suit what was required. And now, in fact, we have to gear up to what is going to come. So right now, we're a lot more professional than we were, because we have to be. It is the other big thing that happened in the last Olympics in America was that rugby got recognized. Rugby sevens got recognized, and that as an Olympic sport. And the minute it became an Olympic sport, it got recognition in India. So it is a recognized sport in India, which it was not till then. That has done two things. One is it has brought national interest, has opened out national interest. The second is we can now be treated as well as any other game that's been played. Otherwise, earlier we were playing this game that nobody had heard of, some foreign type of game, nobody played here. Now we're playing a game that we can legitimately say is played all over the country.
So give us some ideas to the spread. You said 100,000 players, and that in itself raised my eyebrows, which is a fantastic number. But states, districts, men, women. I mean, let's have an idea as to where this sport is spread from your 12 clubs in Bombay and Calcutta to where it is today.
Now, one of the things I must add, when I said 100,000 plus, when I played rugby as a youngster, there weren't women playing in India. There was no women's rugby. It was not heard of. We were not trying to encourage it. We didn't want women to play. There was nothing. There was no talk of that. Today, I'm jumping. Today, 40% of our 100,000 plus are girls and women. I mean, we at Rugby India, and I know, Rahul, you are, and I'm very proud of that. Okay, and so whenever we speak rugby, I mean, 20 years ago, if I said rugby, I would be talking about not male-dominated, a male-only sport. And I didn't have to say anything, about women. So today, if I say rugby, it means men and women. So I will not underline women's rugby in anything that I say. So wherever we're putting efforts out, in fact, in some cases, we might be putting more effort into the women's game. Statistics, 27 states playing, which is a lot, believe me, from, 4 states playing, we've reached 27. 100,000 active players. Now, 100,000 is active players. Now, there's another number which is counted by World Rugby and and even Indian Rugby, is participants. Now, participant is not necessarily a player. I'm a participant. I'm not counted as a player. There are over 200,000 participants. That means supporters and everything that goes around, not just fans, but administration, all kinds of people attached to the game. Right. Over 200,000. That's a big number, Rahul.
So,
give some more stats.
Sorry, please go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
1,200 plus schools and universities playing rugby. 1,200 plus. Okay, We are part of the SGFI, which is the Student Games Federation of India, and All India Universities Games. Okay, we're part of Khelo India. We just did Khelo India. Rugby was a part of Khelo India that happened in Odisha, Bhubaneswar, a couple of months ago. So we've spread into India in a manner not like an elite sport, like a sport on the ground that anybody can play. You don't need to be highly educated, wealthy, own anything fancy. You need no background to play this game except a will to be a sports person.
Right. So, you and I have, of course, had chats about this offline for a long time. But the entire transformation of the sport from being elitist in a few clubs or in a couple of schools to today being thrown open, where there are tribal kids playing in Odisha, to where there are there are farmers from north of India playing, where there are auto mechanics playing, and it's everywhere. Kids from the street in Mumbai also playing. But I think the numbers 100,000, 40,000 women, 60,000 men, 27 states, and I did a count with Nasir Hussain, and I think we came to about, out of 710 districts in the country, this sport is being played in about roughly 230, 240 districts, which is mind-boggling for a sport that's not on television. It's just mind-boggling. So, given what we can say today is a decent platform for any national sport to have, let's talk today about the clubs. Now, you know and I know that the clubs are the generators, the nurseries of players. And that's where traditionally they've come from and continue to, in many places, continue to be the feeders of Indian rugby. Talk to us a little bit about the success and the growth from those 12 clubs. You just mentioned, did you mention about 1,200 clubs and schools, you said. Just talk to us a little bit about...
1,200 schools and universities. Clubs, 27 states. The clubs, I can actually name all the clubs. So it's not in those. So, not in those numbers.
Give us some ideas as to the spread of the sport through the clubs, and what that means for the sport in general.
Well, like I said, earlier when it started, we were playing literally in these two elite clubs, the CCFC in Calcutta and the Bombay Gymkhana here, and the tournaments. These became the centers for the tournament up and down. Now, it didn't mean that all other clubs that were formed were elite clubs. There were the police, there were other clubs that formed and that played in both cities. When it spread outwards, one of the biggest plus point that happened, I feel, for club rugby in India was when it got roots in Delhi, because it took fantastic roots in Delhi. There still are so many players that have come in, and these are all amateur players who have jobs to do, college to go to, things to do, and are playing it for the love of the sport. Okay, and the way amateur rugby and club rugby built up in Delhi is a phenomenal story. In Bombay and Calcutta, it's a little difficult to rate because it's been played for 100 years. In these clubs. In Delhi, it really wasn't played, so it started from the ground up, and. I've seen the rise and fall of many Delhi clubs, and the Hurricanes being somebody that I have to mention, both in women's and men's, are an example of what a club should be. Yes. And clubs are built from friendship and from a different way of entering a sport than a district or a state, because when you play for a district or state, it's a different mindset.
Right. So, as a federation, when you have a strong and a growing population number of clubs, and you now have a base. Let's get to the part where we became, if I can use the word national, registered with the government, SGFI, Khelo India, because then that brings into a sport an invaluable infrastructure without which you can't grow, which is district, state, zonal, national. That is the way sport is constructed by the government, and if you want to grow and you want to grow with the government's blessings, then that's the way you have to be, and that's the way we are. So let's talk to our various viewers and listeners about what that looks like today and why that is necessary, and you know what I'm leading to, why that's necessary for players outside of just playing for clubs, why this becomes the infrastructure to follow both for the sport and for the players.
I mean, this is a really interesting question, and this applies worldwide. Okay, this particular answer I'm going to give you. Now, one of the greatest losses of rugby players, very naturally, all over the world, is, I mean, they'll start, let's say, in school and college, and they're very active, and they'll play in university, and then if they're not going to get sort of professional or play for their country, this is worldwide, the drop-off starts. This is especially so for women when they get into career stage. In India, you know, they're going to college, they're sometimes getting married off. They've got to think of all of those kind of prospects. So the biggest loss of rugby players is to non-revenue to a non-revenue system. So to keep rugby players active, clubs can't really afford to pay players. They're barely, you know, keeping themselves going. So if we want to actually encourage players to be able to have a career in this, we've got to be able to streamline districts, states, national team to a level where a player can think of being, if not a complete professional, at least a part professional. So part of what we are putting into play in the coming year, in fact this year, if we start, is to be able to financially support players who play for the national team, women's and men. Now, as this grows, we hope that states will pick this up and we start being able to give stipends, give people the money to be able to take time off to train, if possible, enough money then to make this a full-time profession.
And of course, the other advantage, Mahesh, of us becoming, of constructing the entire sport along district, state and zonal levels is that with the affiliation to the Indian Olympic Committee, with the affiliation to the Government of India, with the affiliation to various state governments, what happens is, and I'd like you to elaborate, is that players can then look for jobs within the governmental setup. Or tomorrow, if we get, as we are trying very hard to get affiliation to the police games, then various job opportunities open up in the governmental sector for players where they can play and also hold down a government job, right?
This is already happening. This happened after we became a recognized sport, you know, which was only a few years ago. Before that, you know, if you are not a recognized sport, you cannot put on your application form, I play rugby. Today, if you play rugby for your state, and I know I signed those forms, you know, very happily and proudly. When people have played for a state tournament, they write back and there's a certificate they get that they played such and such national tournament for their state, you know, and similarly, it would be happening for schools and universities where these become professional certificates that help you get government jobs. And certainly in Odisha, we are already seeing people joining civil services, not just police, but other civil jobs, government jobs. You know, so if we can get that pathway going, it's absolutely wonderful.
And of course, in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 months, you and I are very aware of the fact that we've approached one particular sponsor where we've said very clearly, the money you will give us is for the players. It's not for building ground, it's nothing, it's just for the players. And this is to make sure that we can put money into the hands of, right now, national players that will compensate for the time they miss during the camp, before a international rugby tournament, and during the tournament itself, so that for those 4 to 6 weeks, they are more than adequately paid properly, so that they don't have to worry about money for those 6 weeks. If that happens, and hopefully in the post-COVID months to come, that should be closed. That will be a huge thing, because personally, Mahesh, I have always felt that we can break this cycle if we can pay players. Once we start to pay players, once we begin to get sponsorship for players, then automatically the mindset of somebody is not that मैं 15 साल से 22 साल तक खेलूंगा, उसके बाद इंडिया के लिए 3-4 बार खेल के मैं निकल जाऊंगा, मेरे पास सर्टिफिकेट होगा, मेरे पास फोटोग्राफ्स होंगे, मेरे पास एक मेडल होगा, उसके बाद जर्सी होगा, उसके बाद मैं निकल जाऊंगा. ऐसा नहीं कि ये मैं सोच सकता हूँ कि ये अगले 10 साल के लिए मेरा करियर बन सकता है. That idea is a very, very integral part of an idea to make a sport truly then India will go international in a much bigger way, because we will stop losing that kind of player around.
Absolutely, and this is something we are seeing not just in rugby, but in reference to India. We are seeing Indian players hit the world map. There's so many fantastic men and women, boys and girls going out and making their name in international sport, and they come back as such big heroes. So there is a recognition that our country is giving sports people, which I think is phenomenal. It was very rare to see so many sports people getting the recognition that only a handful. A few cricketers would get it, a few hockey players when India, was a big hockey playing nation, or winning hockey nation. But that was about it. You didn't really hear about much, or somebody came fourth in the Olympics, but now we're seeing so much more, and that's something that I guess even our rugby playing youngsters, boys and girls, when they go back home and they say we're playing a sport, I'm sure that recognition that other players in other sports and some of our own get in the media as far as the Prime Minister, helps a lot in being able to convince the home folk to allow them to play.
Okay, so let's talk now specifically. We'll get to the women later. Let's specifically talk about the national men's team, the Indian team for men, and what I know, because we can chat about this, are the 2 or 3 things that have been put in place to really push the Indian men's team and the performance to a higher level in the very near future?
The first and most important thing is that we got a coach, an international coach, Mr. Nas Botha. If any of you was lucky enough to watch him, and I think Nasser a couple of weeks ago, that Nas Botha, who is one of the most legendary rugby players in the world, and a great coach too. For him to be able to take on our national program, he came on board. He and his team of coaches came on board to be our national coaches for the women and for the men.
Yeah.
And we never thought we could even aspire to something like this. Honestly, 2 or 3 years ago, if you'd asked any of us, oh, can you get a proper international coach for your sides? I mean, I don't even want to go what number we are internationally, but we're not high enough to warrant any big national coach from any sort of famous rugby playing country. But I think it was fate, it was good luck that our paths crossed, that Nas Botha and his team happened to be in India on something else. It is good fate that we were able to meet. He came and watched a bit of rugby and he said, this is not so bad. And suddenly you weren't so embarrassed. You said, wow, Nas Botha watched some boys and girls play and he said, it's not so bad. And then the engagement started. And so we didn't get into this with any embarrassment saying, we're all bad players, we don't know how to play. No, there was nothing. It was completely natural. He recognized where we were, where the sport was in India, and looked at the possibilities. And he gave us the encouragement that, look, you can get somewhere. I have to add here, it is my personal thinking that Nas and team, being from South Africa, have been much more used to a multicultural society and country than I think a lot of Western or a lot of other coaches would have been. He comes from a country that has various races, religions, all everything. They have rich, they have poor, they have all of the I would say the variety that India has. So for him to deal with a spectrum of players coming from different economic backgrounds was nothing new. Dealing with girls from different backgrounds, whether they be village or Delhi or Bombay, nothing new. And that he and his team, and I speak about them all, that was a really great gift, and it's become an association. It's an ongoing thing. It will be a friendship. It will, it's all of those. So Nas Botha not just brings his coaching skills, he brings a lot of what South Africa can offer in the rugby world to us, which is a huge deal now. They are the world champions.
Yeah. So, so one thing is for the national men's team, and we'll get to the women. The national men's team is, we have a very, very, very fine coaching team behind the men. The other thing that which happened very fortuitously in 2019 was the availability of Abhinav Bindra's High Performance Center in Bhubaneswar, which of course in conjunction with the government of Odisha is located in Bhubaneswar on the premises of the stadium itself. And the men's team had access to it, as did the women's team. But after having a conversation with Abhinav, who, I mean, we've been friends for now, I mean, maybe 10, 12 years. He very kindly has told us, as you know, Mahesh, and I'm just saying this for everybody else, that we can use all the 4 or 5 high-performance centers that he has put his name to, the ABTBB, across the country. So that automatically made us very enthusiastic and said, so we showed it to the South African coaching team. And I think Nas wasn't there at the time. I think Ludwig and the others were there. And they said that this high-performance center that was shown to them in Bhubaneswar was good, if not better, than most high-performance centers they have seen in other parts of the world, which obviously goes to show that these 4 or 5 centers, which whenever we need to use, wherever we have our camps, if we can actually bring out now we can tell the coaches, we can use these centers in a very scientific and regular way. It's not just drop into a center once during the camp, but make it part of the camp. Then automatically this will, and you can gauge player performances over the next 4 weeks through the centers. I mean, this could be a game changer in itself in terms of fitness, in terms of stamina, in terms of all the parameters needed to be a great rugby player.
Absolutely. So yeah, Rahul, you've touched upon that second part, which is a center, a rugby, high performance center, and thank Abhinav Bindra for being so kind with us. I mean, there are other conversations, as you know, going on in Odisha, and Odisha is a state that's a big support to us as a rugby union, and it's an ongoing partnership which you're very kindly leading. I mean, there are also talks in Maharashtra, in Bombay, in fact, in Mumbai, for possibly getting up, playing zone.
So using high performance centers for men's rugby in terms of their performance. Let's talk about that now, because that is a question I'm going to ask you later, which is about a national, and I said this before you came on air, a national center for rugby, which is something really needed, as opposed to a performance center, which could be not a gym, but like a gym lab kind of thing, where our teams go in and go out, go in and go out. But we'll get to that, which I think is a cherry on the cake a little bit later. So let me just recap. You guys have put in a enviable, superb coaching team for the men's national team. We now have access to, as I was also saying, high-performance centers, especially the 4 or 5 that Abhinav Bindra has done in conjunction with various partners across the country, which we have access to. And the third thing that we've already talked about, I'm just going to add it here so that people understand what we're doing for men's rugby, is making money available, right, to pay the players during the camps and during the tournaments. Okay, so that's what's happening with men's rugby. Given all of this, and we are ranked 84th in the world right now and 13th in Asia, let me ask you to stick your neck out and tell us, because I've stuck my neck out in the past, in 2040, what do you expect, what's the goal of Rugby India to have as the Indian men's team's ranking internationally, from 84 to where?
Well, by 84, we better be under 50. But
by
more,
2040, you mean?
But by 2040, I mean, sorry. We better be under, above 50. But what I would love to see is a higher progress in Asia. Asia is a very interesting, Asia and Asia rugby is very interesting because it is on one end, very early stages in there are 31 countries playing rugby in Asia at different stages. And at the top end, we have countries like Japan who have qualified for the World Cup. So that's the extreme top end. So, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea are the extreme, the elite. After that, when you come below that, I believe India can start to compete, and that's a ladder we can climb. So, out of those top three nations, after that, I would say the Indian men better be on the podium.
Got it. Okay.
Why I say after that is people like Japan actually step back from playing a lot of the top end Asian, except if they're qualifiers for Olympics, etc., to make way for. So I would say if you remove those top three countries, we should aim to be on the podium in those 20 years.
Okay, so
Men's.
that's a pretty it's a goal that I think is achievable, but we'll have to work very, very hard for it. But it's exciting. Let's get to the women's game now.
Hang on, just as a quick one, and Rahul, this will interest you. One of the things that we were always wary of was international competition. How well were we doing? Would our men be able to do well or not? And it's interesting. I was in Dubai for the Dubai Sevens, and I was walking around, and one of our team coaches, Ludwig, who was one of NASA's coaches, actually took a few of our players, our Indian players, out to play for a South African All-Star club side. Now, that makes me incredibly proud. Okay, I mean, here there was no national jersey or national flag or any of that involved, but I was very, very proud to see 4 Indian boys, fantastic players, playing out on an international club scene. Okay, and that was a very, very happy thing to see, and I'll show you. There they are.
Oh,
now if you recognize all those boys, I hope some of you are watching. So why I brought that up is these individual sparks of people going out and playing bring back encouragement into the game here. People are going to say, you know what, I can do this. If those 4 could do it, I'm next in line. I can go. And this is one. Coach Naspota has said that some of our players could possibly reach South African club level playing. So these are other opportunities which feed back into Indian men's rugby.
yeah. I mean, it's these are the things that happen when you have exposure through the coaching team, for example, to places outside of the country, which normally we would not even know how to get there. Okay, so let's talk about Indian women's rugby. Tell us a little bit about what is it that we should kick off by. I mean, it's been a fantastic year for Indian women's rugby. Why don't you tell us a little bit about where we are in terms of rankings and things like that, Asia and world, and what are the couple of very, very interesting and things to be proud of that happened last year with Indian women's rugby. And I'm talking about Sweetie and Shweta and all of that. But give us an overview as to what's going on. Let's start with the rankings, Mahesh.
Yeah, I'm just looking up the rankings. I have stats in front of me. Rahul, do you know where we're ranked?
Yeah. Let me see. It was women's. I'm going to get the rankings up.
I mean, there's a lot less women's sides anyway in total. Anyway, while you find that, the last year, 2019, was fantastic for women's rugby for a bunch of things. One is, and I must say, I have to speak first about a game that was won rather than a couple of star players who I'll talk about. For the Indian girls to go and beat Singapore in a test match, I think was one of the greatest things that I've heard about in a long time.
Oh yeah, it was just their fourth test match when they won. It was astonishing.
Yeah.
The 15th, no?
Yeah.
There's a video doing the rounds where this one of the players is crying and can't believe that it's happened. I'm just trying to check the rankings. The ranking, I think we're ranked in the definitely top 10 in Asia. I'm just trying to see where it is. Maybe if Nasir can come on and tell us what the rankings are, because you're right. I myself, I think it's substantially. Is it fourth in Asia?
Well, no, we're not fourth in Asia, but we did come fourth in one of the tournaments. I don't think we're ranked fourth.
Okay, so here we go. We are ninth in Asia, is what someone's telling me. Ninth in the sevens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And internationally, I think it's 40, 41, 42. We'll wait for national, the ranking. Okay.
So here's where I feel the development and the rate of increase can be much faster here in the women for two reasons. One is where we're a new entrant. We've started very low, so the movement is going to go. It'll look faster. The second is that the difference within Asia of the size of our players versus the size of others, other countries, the difference is much less with the women than the men. Yes, when we go, past that into Europe, there is a size difference that starts to make a larger impact. But within Asia, I feel we should be aiming for that podium directly, with no exceptions.
Okay, now tell us about the lovely story about Sweta and Sweetie, which happened last year. Making the rounds, but it's something that that just was so unbelievably quick and sudden and beautiful, and I think it's made such a difference because when I was speaking to Sweetie the other day, we were talking. I was talking to her on Rugby India 360, and it's amazing the kind of change that you see in her in the last couple of years. So take us through those stories.
Well, I must say one of the first times I saw Sweetie play, I was lucky enough to be in Odisha for the when I think Rahul, you were there too, when there was the international sevens women's being played at the Kalinga Stadium. And I think they were going to, Sweetie was, I think Hong Kong was the top rated side. And Hong Kong and China. And the whistle blew and the game started. And before anybody could even get to their senses, Sweetie was scoring a try. I mean, against what turned out to be the top side. I mean, that video of her scoring, running around the Hong Kong girls was a video that really went all over the place. Okay. And in fact, there's another little photo I have from there, which
Sweetie's
is
on right now.
Sorry?
I think Sweetie's on this. She's listening to this.
Good. I hope, Sweetie, you're seeing this. And of course, she made her state proud.
Wow.
With the Chief Minister. So, I mean, that's national recognition. There was something even greater than that. She got recognized as one of the 3 outstanding players in the world. Now, we are all so thrilled with that. That's an achievement that to come out of India, ranked 50, to take a player and say, this is our, this is somebody we are stamping with, sign of excellence and going into the future. That's right. Really, really cool. I think somebody like Sweetie inspires so many other girls and women in this country, especially given that she doesn't come from a big urban center where a lot of the others do.
Yeah.
One of the most wonderful things that I saw in your interview with her was when she called her mother and you spoke with her mother. So Sweetie, if you're watching this, please give your mother full arms. So to see her journey travel from where she has to where she has now internationally is absolutely fantastic. And I think at Rugby India, we're going to be using role models like this to encourage more girls coming to the game, to encourage more parents to allow more girls to be coming to this game, to be very naturally taking the values of rugby back into their communities, into their homes. And this is something I remember when I met Katie Sadler, who's the women's rugby world representative. I said, you know what? When she asked me what is the future of women's rugby and men's, India, I said we may not reach the top podiums, you know, in a hurry, but the values of rugby are spreading at a level that you wouldn't even have imagined it out in the country, in rural areas, in small towns, in smaller schools. Those values are, they're eventually human values, and that's something that people like Sweetie embody. Now, interestingly, the World Rugby was going to come out with a campaign very shortly after that, and they were choosing, and this was a women's campaign. World Rugby wanted to underline women's rugby as a big thing for the campaign last year. And I know that they went all over the world and photographed lots of people, and they came up with a campaign called Unstoppable, which is not just a rugby idea, but it has an aspect of empowering women. They were not just saying women who play rugby. It was an underlining of empowering women, that we are unstoppable. And if you notice, Rahul, in the last couple of years, empowerment of women is something that's gaining ground and is becoming evident everywhere, and is being applauded and supported and cheered. And it was fantastic for their Unstoppable campaign that they selected a bunch of women from all over the world, and Shweta, our very own Shweta from India, was part of that campaign. And I have a photograph, and this is their. I mean, that's all I have. But yeah, they did that, and then they did 3 films. I'm not going to play a film now, and that's Shweta. And they, at the World Rugby Conference this year, they played 5 films, which they normally 5 little films talking about rugby, the state of rugby in the whole world. Yeah. Out of the 5 films, and they're short films, they're like a minute or 2. Out of the 5 films, 3 were about India. One was about Shweta, one was about Sweetie, and one was about just women's playing. And that's, I think, fantastic. So the work that's being done by the women, and I guess by Rugby India, yeah, with the women of rugby playing women in India, is being noticed. And it's being noticed not because we're on the podium. It's being noticed because of what it's producing, the results it's producing in terms of people. So let's talk about in the next 20 years, where do you expect our women's national team to be? Sorry, I'm losing your voice. Sorry? Losing your voice. You can't hear me? Too soft. Your voice has gone very soft. I don't. Can you hear me? I can hear you, yeah. Mahesh, can you hear me? Hi. Mahesh? Yeah, I can't really. Shall we rejoin this? Yeah, I can't hear you. You can't hear me at all. Can anybody else hear me? Audience, I know you're. Both can be heard. We can hear you, Rahul. Yeah. It might be. Can you hear me, Rahul? I can hear you clearly. Wow. I mean, I can hear just a very, very little bit. Okay. If you can hear me enough, I'm going to ask you the next question. Mahesh? Okay, so... Shall I cut and join again? If it helps. In any case, I have been reading some comments. Address that. Everybody else can hear you, Mahesh. Okay, so while Mahesh is trying to get on, somebody asked me, do you know the difference between rugby and a paratha? No, what's the difference? I really wonder. Isn't it the same? I've tried eating a rugby ball. It's tastier than my parathas. So
networks weak in Bombay because of corruption. Rosina Beats. Okay, I don't know what that has to do with us. People ask me about are you going to act in anything else? Yes, I am. I've already done 2 shows on Netflix which haven't released as yet, and a movie in which I play my first double role. So that's going to come out. That's also for Netflix. That's going to come out soon. Any other questions? You might need to send him a request. Yes, Anand, I will. Rugby India. Okay. Go live. Yeah, so I answered the questions. One was, I have no clue about corruption in Bombay. Rosina Beats, I don't know who you are. It has nothing to do with this chat. But
I'm back.
What does have to do with this chat is the fact that I know the difference between rugby and a paratha. And as I said, I've done 2 series and a film which should be coming out this year. Now, I was just chatting to various comments.
Yeah.
Are you okay now?
I can hear you loud and clear now.
So was it a charging problem or what?
No. It's just I just got off and got back on. No. I have full charge.
So let's talk about targets for women's national team. I want to know what targets IRFU is setting. 2040, where do you expect them to be? If it's 41 in the world today, and I think it's 9th in Asia, right?
Yeah, well, you know what? It's Asia's an easier target. The world is a slightly more shot in the dark type of. I'll just say we should be 20 or something like that. Asia is a more visible target. So again, I would say podium. We have to be on that podium.
Yeah.
We have to be on that podium, including Japan, Hong Kong, South Korea, all of those. Okay, in the women's game, I feel we can get in 20 years. Our girls, our women can be on that podium.
So now we come to what you were saying earlier, and I said let's not talk about it. Let's talk about the desperate need, the crying need for a national rugby facility. We don't have one as yet, and the fact of the matter is that we've never had one. But I know and you know that there are some very, very strong and positive movements going on about that. So let me first ask you, what is it that you would like this National Center for Rugby to mean for the sport? And what do you think it will bring to the sport?
Well, number one, and all of us who played rugby in India, and probably any other sport, any other field sport, have known that without a field, you can't play the game. Fields are they're so hard to come by all over, whether it's Delhi, Bombay, Kolkata, Bangalore, Chennai. Fields are very, very difficult to come by. And therefore, to be able to play, to get other players in, to have tournaments, to practice, a field has always been the most difficult thing. Now, if you want to have a national center of anything, of rugby, you have to have at least one dedicated ground. Now, I'm sad to say we don't even have one single dedicated ground to rugby in this country. Now, it's sad, but it's not an easy one. And I think that's the first target we've got to get. We can get a high performance training center, all of that along the way, but we have to have one national ground where we hold tournaments, where that becomes the home of rugby. And it doesn't matter where it is. It does not need to be in Mumbai. It does not need to be in Kolkata or Chennai anyway. It can be in Bhubaneswar, it can be in Goa, it can be in Chandigarh, it can be wherever. But we need a home of rugby.
Because I think that for any sport, when you look, when a player is growing up, when they're young, when they're looking, I think there has to be an aspirational level that one day I will play there. Maybe in cricket, it's one day I will play in Firozshah Kotla, one day I'll play in Eden Gardens, one day I'll play in Wankhede Stadium, one day at Chinnaswamy, one day at Chepauk, wherever it is. Somehow or the other, that place becomes a kind of a place to fix your dreams to, that one day I'll play on that ground. And I think it's important once and hopefully fingers crossed, as you and I know, we are working very hard towards this. if in 2020 we manage to close that and manage to make that happen, then I think for that to become a center of excellence, for that not just to be a ground, Mahesh,
Yeah.
keeping our fingers crossed if we can raise money in and around that facility, to make it a place where people can come and, like the National Cricket Academy in Bangalore, for example,
Yeah.
where people come and they heal and they do physio and they have, they have sessions there and people come in with actual, physical talks or with physical demonstrations and talks and all of that. If we can grow that to be a center of excellence, as you said, wherever in this country it might be, is immaterial. But if we can grow that, then that, I think, in a very simple, elemental way, for all players, it becomes कि एक दिन मुझे वहाँ पे खेलना है, एक दिन मैं वहाँ पे पहुँचूंगा. It becomes a kind of a north star for a lot of players. Aside from obviously the good it means.
It does. And the thing is, if you get a dedicated ground, it allows you to invite, teams, neighboring countries, teams, foreign teams, have sevens tournaments for people to watch, maybe not the top stars, but, some stars play. I mean, cricket has done that. We've had every single star of cricket play on some Indian ground somewhere and be an inspiration to kids and, people who want to play. I feel we still need to do that. And because of not having grounds, we've had to follow the whims of the people who own those grounds. Therefore, that's going to be the season. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do. So that's really not a great space for a sport that's growing the size of rugby in India. Not to have a ground is a pretty bad thing.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, tell us about new regions. Okay, now we know 28 states or 27 states, 240, 250 odd districts, 100,000 players, all of that. But tell us about new possibilities and new parts of this country, or in a state where we are previously, but in a new part of that state where initiatives are starting to grow the game. Because that's something I don't think anyone knows about as yet.
Yeah, I'll just jump back a little bit again, from where rugby used to be played, like I said, in those two centers with, 12, 15 clubs. And as the game evolved in India, suddenly you found there were people playing in Odisha. I remember first hearing, I said, Odisha, how did rugby get there? What? Who's winning the national women's? Odisha. I said, my God, what's going on? So I'm just using Odisha as an example. It was so unexpected for rugby for that to become a rugby power center, which it is today. In our national scenario, Odisha is a rugby power center. Yeah. Now, as surprising as that was, we are now seeing places like Telangana. There's so much little small spurts picking up all over the country that anywhere it's not about where can we go. It can pick up anywhere. This is a big country, and obviously, if we can take the program out and plant it in places, it will grow. So right now, I mean, I actually have this the KISS program everybody knows about, Mayur Bunch. BMC schools in Mumbai. That's a big success story. Yeah, we're getting into BMC schools.
That's in fact, COVID has come in the middle of all that, because otherwise it would have been we would be doing it right now. We had in deep discussions, and I think Nasir and Anand, all of them will tell you that we were just on the threshold of starting that BMC initiative, but post COVID, yeah. And
so
in Telangana.
Yeah, there's an organization called the Telangana Tribal and Welfare Society, and Dr. Praveen Kumar, who spearheads that, and they're running a program it's interesting, with 180 parents of tribal kids. So we're approaching it slightly differently. I mean, I don't think my parents were ever asked about me playing. We went and played, and then figured it out, or were stopped, or whatever, fired. So there's a program with 180 parents of tribal kids, 280 PE teachers and coaches in tribal schools, 600 under 14s, and 6 societies. So the tribal schools are formed in societies. So there are 6 societies, and there's a tournament already being talked about within that. So that's pretty impressive, because those players are starting to already represent Telangana in the sub-junior.
That's interesting. I think this thing had a 60-minute limit or something like that. I'm going to ask Mahesh to join again. I thought we could take some questions from people if they had something they wanted to ask Mahesh. Just give me a second. Anand, if you're on, just ask Mahesh to come on. I'll pull him up on this. Yeah, so maybe we have, let's see what time it is now. It's 5 to 7. Questions for about 4 or 5 minutes about anything you think we might have skipped in this talk. Till Mahesh comes on, I'm just going to give you guys a recap of what we've been talking about. We talked about club rugby, and how it's grown exponentially, and how clubs continue to be the nurseries of players for the sport. Second, making the sport into a stratified, structured system across districts, states, zones, and of course for the country, and what that means in terms of job opportunities for various boys and girls, men and women, as they keep playing. Third, the Indian men's rugby team and the 3 great developments. One is a fantastic coaching staff, 2 is access to 4 or 5 high performance centers across the country, and 3, to put money into players' pockets very, very soon, so that for the 6 weeks that they play, at least for the national tournament, coaching camp as well as the tournament, they get paid. Women's, Mahesh was talking about the success of the women's team, given the fact that they are physically almost the same as Rugby India Center. There we go. Given the fact that physically they are, there's not much difference between players from India and players from other parts of the world, as well as the women are today, ranked 41, ranked 9th. He said his goals were pretty. He was enumerating the kind of goals that IRFU have for the men and women, and then the success of course, Shweta and Sweetie, in terms of, it's very nice for them to get publicity, for them to be talked about. Then we moved on to the need for a the need for a center of Indian rugby, and how that becomes a kind of a lodestar, a kind of an inspirational dream for a lot of players to say, one day I will play there, one day I will visit there. And that also becomes a place where you talk about the physical and the rehabilitation and the prep of players at a very high level at that center. And of course, it has its own ground, etc. And then finally, we were talking about, before I got cut off, we were talking about the growth in places, regional places in the country, regional areas of the country where growth hasn't happened till now. Very exciting 2 initiatives Mahesh enumerated. One was with the BMC schools in Bombay, which will happen soon, post-COVID, I'm sure. And 2 is with the Telangana Social Welfare Residential Education Institutions in Telangana, which is about 180 of these schools being run under the auspices of Dr. R.S. Praveen Kumar and his contemporaries in that region. So, Mahesh, I thought we have about 5 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, maybe we can have a look at people who have questions related to what we've been talking about. Anybody? Any questions at all?
Something I must add while people are thinking up questions, is the big thing I've noticed in the last 2 or 3 years is a recognition by World Rugby that something's happening in India. They're seeing that there's some movement, whether it's happening from the ground up, they're recognizing it. And you'll remember, Rahul, last year they brought the World Cup through India. They took it to Agra and all of that. Now, they didn't do that because they're friends of yours or mine. Okay, they did that because they thought and they do this with countries they feel are going to be important in the future. It's called the Road to the World Cup, and so they take the World Cup. They don't take it to all the countries that want it. They take it to a few countries, and India was selected, and that got us thinking at Rugby India that hang on, they're recognizing that something's happening here, that the game is either is taking roots and is spreading, and therefore, is it going to be the spread of viewership? Are there going to be more people interested? So I definitely feel there is attention on India vis-a-vis rugby. I know that it's happening with the women's rugby, as you know, because of the campaign, etc. But the world of rugby is looking at India, or let's say we've entered their horizon, and that's something we should be aware of and take forward.
Okay, I can't see any relevant questions coming up right now, but I think that the message that I think that has come out of everything you're saying is that there's a lot of work that IRFU is putting in. There's a lot of work to be done. It's a massive country, and from what we've been talking about, there are many levels to growing a sport, from the grassroots all the way to the top. Thanks for giving us an idea as to what's going on, Mahesh, because I don't think very many people had the idea. If we all work for the good of the game, and without any kind of, without looking left or right, up or down as to who is playing what, as long as the game grows and people grow with that game, then I think nothing is going to stop the sport. I think we're going to have 2 or 3 more sessions of Rugby 360, Rugby India 360, which will be, I think there's one with the media, one with potential sponsors, one with clubs, one with the administrators in the country from part of government who've been helping us. So there's still lots of dimensions to discuss. And maybe if we want, with your permission, we'll pull you in as one of the people to discuss it with them, so that people have an idea as to exactly how far and how deep IRFU's plans are going.
Yeah, thanks, Rahul. I'm happy to always join in. What do you think of from Rugby India's point of from Rugby India? So not a newsletter. Newsletter sounds boring, but say 1 month, every month, if you come out with just what's going on, which will include things like what we talked about just now,
like
fun
a video
things.
magazine.
Whether it's a video magazine or I'm not sure what the format. I know it needs to be online. I know it needs to be in present day modern communication. So that's why I'm saying a newsletter is an old fashioned type of thing, but something that comes out regularly and and has people and is interactive, and where we can hear people, becomes a little more of a discussion than say just this.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's great for people's voices to be heard, and for you guys to constantly have a two-way communication with people. What more would any player or any administrator want?
Fantastic.
Okay, guys.
Thank you, Rahul.
Thanks everybody
Thank you.
for coming on. Thanks for the extremely funny comments that I've been reading. Some to do with rugby and some not.
Can I have a suggestion? Sorry, quick one before you wrap. Okay, I was just thinking it's very difficult to read people's questions while they're on this. Okay. So I don't know whether it's worth having a place you can WhatsApp the question separately or something, because the questions are rolling up, and before I can finish reading one, it's gone. So whether there's some more effective way of doing this.
Anand and his team deal with that. Anand, I hope you're listening. It'll be great to have the questions coming in so that Mahesh can answer them at leisure later on. But for now, thanks for being on, and see you. I think the next Rugby India 360 degrees is on Sunday.
Yeah. Okay.
But you'll read about that in social media. Thanks.
Thanks
Bye,
all. Thanks, Rahul. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you all.